And just taking a few moments to connect with your breath. If it's helpful, you can place the right hand on the heart and the left hand on the belly. And just feel each breath being poured into you and being emptied out. What a potent cycle. The cycle of life, presence, nourishment, awareness. As you breathe in, remind yourself that you are receiving a great gift. And as you breathe out, you are making an offering substantially to the wellness and the wholeness of this world, of your life, of your community. As you breathe in, you're breathing in that potential and the free will to follow it as far as you wish to. And as you breathe out, you follow it, or you cast it aside. That's your choice. But know that either way, at the heart of it, it is a gift. And because the gift is so strong and powerful and special and unique and full of grace, perhaps we can all work to make the offering comparable. Draw the hands together in front of the heart. We'll lift our voices in one Om, followed by the invocation mantras. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om Ganana Antva Ganapati Gum Havamahe Kavin Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jestarajam Brahmanan Brahmanaspata Anashrinvanuti Bhasidha Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhir Vajini Vati Dhinama Vitriyavatu Ano Devo Brahataf Parvata Da Saraswati Yajata Gantu Yagnyam Havan Devi Jujushana Ghritachi Shagmam Novacha Mushati Shrinotu Vagdevyai Namaha. And then releasing the hands down and fluttering the eyes open. I thought today we would talk about a very popular saying in the yoga world, in the spiritual world in general, in the empowerment world, in the self-help world. And it's just a phrase that everybody uses from time to time. And that phrase is, it all comes down to you. It all comes down to you. I never really cared for that phrase. Didn't really like it. I always felt it was a really heavy responsibility. What do you mean it all comes down to me? What does that mean about the condition of the world around me? What does that mean about the doors that are open and closed to me? What does that mean about the conditions I find my life in? What does that mean about all these other details? And so I really, for a long time in my younger life, that statement just really made no sense to me. It was an easy out. It was an easy out for people who didn't want to hear it. It was an easy out for people who just wanted to blame. It was an easy out for a lot of things. But as I started getting older, I started looking at it in a different framework. It really comes down to you. It's all up to you. What does that actually mean? Does it mean that your level of success or failure in the eyes of others comes down to you? Does it mean that you hitting it big on Wall Street or losing your home because of COVID all came down to you? Is that what it means? Does it mean that every material thing that you acquire or don't acquire in this life all came down to you? No, that's not what it means at all. Even though in, like the self-help world or the more new agey, attract money and material things to yourself world might frame it that way. That's actually not the healthiest way to frame it. It's not the healthiest way to look at it. Then in the yoga tradition, when we talk about this idea, which is put forward in different words, it all comes down to you. What it is an invitation for something called svadhyaya. Svadhyaya, self-study. Svadyaya. And it has nothing to do with whether or not you got the job, with whether or not you hit it big on Wall Street, with whether or not you were able to psychically tune in to the winning numbers of the lottery. It has nothing to do with it at all in any way, shape, or form. What it has to do with is what part of your own life is your own self-made suffering, and what part of your own life is your own self-made joy. It's not asking you what part of your suffering is in the hands of others. It's not what it's asking you. It's saying, what role do you play in it? Where is your self-responsibility? Because as human beings, we very much too often say, well, it's because of my mother. It's because of my father. It's because of my boyfriend or girlfriend. It's because of them. It's because of them. And sometimes, in certain instances, there is a validity there. There is a relationship to the idea that doors are open or doors are closed based on criteria that society has selected. But in other instances, that's not the case. In other instances, the story that we tell ourselves in our own mind and the fear by which we allow ourselves to be guided, that's the case. So when we use terms like that, like it's all up to you, what we're saying is, do you even know what your own fears are? What's your greatest fear, Cal?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Really,
What's your greatest fear?
Oh, being alone forever.
Being alone forever. I think a lot of people are right there with you. What's your greatest fear?
I'm going to do some thinking about that.
Yeah. What's your greatest fear?
That I am absolutely as powerful as I believe that I am.
Is that really your greatest fear?
Yeah.
Okay. Dig a little deeper. We'll come back to that.
Okay.
What's your greatest fear?
I'll never have all the answers.
Oh, that's another really great one too. Or any of them. What's your greatest fear, Lena? Spiders.
Oh, you got one for that.
There's this really great little video about spiders. This guy, he's got a, what do you call those spiders that are over in like Saudi Arabia? Those big ones? No. The big ones. They look like wolf spiders on steroids. They're so huge. And they chase after like the army jeeps because they're trying to stay in the shade.
Yeah, I know.
You know the ones I'm saying? Well, this guy, he's doing this video and he's got this one crawling all over his hand, and it's his pet. And he's like, yeah, he's rubbing his fangs on me. I don't really like that, but I don't know, maybe he's got an itch or something. And he's talking about them and how delicate they are and how they're not aggressive. And this is walking all over his hand, and it's like this big, And then he goes, I have to help it back up because if it falls down, it's going to get hurt. And like he's talking so compassionately about this spider and so lovingly about this spider. And then he starts talking about how wolf spiders, they're not going to chase you. They're not going to come after you to bite you. They're afraid of you. They're like big human, big foot. I'm out of here, And what they do eat are the insects that we don't really want in our house besides them. They eat all those other ones that we don't want there. But that is such a common fear. And it is a big fear for people. It's stuff in nightmares, right? And horror movies, arachnophobia, for example. For sure. But I wonder where that fear comes from. I wonder if somewhere along the line, as a little girl, you liked to actually play with spiders. Or you were taken by them and someone said, don't do that, it'll bite you. And instilled that fear in you. Because I know for myself, when I was a little girl, I had a pet spider out in the garden. It was a big one. And like my childhood memory makes it much bigger than what it actually was. In my childhood memory, it was like this big, round spider with these big, long legs. And I had a bright green margarine cup from the house that I used to put over it so it wouldn't run too far away from me. And my grandmother came out of the house one day and she said, what are you playing with? And I said, nothing. And she pulled the margarine thing off of it. She went, don't play with those things. They'll bite you. You'll die. Splat. Yeah. And I was mortified. And probably for some time after that, I was like, I don't like spiders now. But it wasn't because I didn't like spiders. It was because I was told not to. Because I was told not to. I love spiders now, though. I do. And, oh yeah, totally. Yep. I used to be the spider woman in the office. They would jokingly call me Spider Woman. And so my little thing on my phone would beep, and I'd put on my intercom and it'd be like, Sharon, you have 5 seconds to get down here. I'd go bolting down the hall with my little cup and my paper, and I'd scoop it up and put the paper there and then take it outside and let it go in the garden, And she would constantly be like, you don't know how lucky that spider is that you're here. So who told you to be afraid of that? Who told you to be afraid of that? Now we flip to the other side and we say, I'm afraid that I am nowhere near as powerful as, say it the way you said it.
That I believe I am.
That what?
That I believe that I am.
That you believe that you are. Now, there's both a truth and a fallacy there. Because if you truly believed that you are as powerful as you want to believe you are, you would have no fear about it. Therefore, there is a part of you at least that doesn't actually believe it, but wants to. And that's important to know. Because it's a beautiful thing to feel and to want for yourself and to say, there are these thoughts, there are these memories, there are these inspirations. There is this part of me that knows that I am absolutely powerful, but the ego is still at play. And denying the fear isn't going to get rid of it. I don't know if you all saw what I posted. I said, our anger and violence is not like a hole in a sock to be mended. No, we can't do that. We can't just mend it. We have to look at it, explore it, understand it, and then consciously make decisions more aligned with what it is that our heart compels us toward. And so your heart compels you to the understanding of your own empowerment, absolutely. And so you keep working in that direction. But also remember that as long as you are in a body, that those gunas of nature, that passion, that lethargy, and that compelling for some kind of perfection is going to derail you from time to time. And for most people, a lot of the time. Does that make sense? Yeah, totally. It's really important. But we have the two extremes, right? We have the one extreme where we have this fear of things. And why would we be afraid of it? Have you ever seen a child? A child is not afraid of anything. Little kid, they're not afraid of anything. It's the parent or the aunt or the uncle or the friend of the family who says, don't do that. You'll hurt yourself. Have you ever watched The Christmas Story? What do you want that for? You'll shoot your eye out. And what does he do? The moment he gets it, right? Did he do that because it was inevitable? Or did he do that because he was told to? All those different times. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So we need to understand that. We need to understand the influence that the outside has on us, the external. And we also need to understand the influence of what we ourselves carry has on us. That's equally, if not more important, because the quality of what we carry inside ourselves is exactly what makes us susceptible to those external influences. Now, as a child, there's not much that we could do about it, because as a child, we haven't formulated an opinion or an understanding of the power of those outside thoughts. We have trust. I look at Dayananda and Brahmani's little baby girl, and she just has trust for everybody. So someone can go up and say, oh my gosh, you're just so sweet and wonderful and full of light and grace. And she'll be like, goo goo gaga, And someone else could walk up to her and say something the exact opposite. And she'd be like, goo goo gaga. And we may not realize it, but she hears every word. She hears every word. And from the moment that she's born and she's hearing words, she knows what they mean. She knows. She has a sense of the energy of the word. She doesn't have to know what the word tree means tree, but she knows that there's an impression that goes along with the sound vibration of the word. So from the moment she's born, she's receiving messages about who she should and shouldn't be, And just like every child, every little baby does. And then eventually she grows up with some kind of turmoil within her own self, trying to balance everything she's been told in her life about her goodness, about her not goodness, about her potential, about her not potential, about all of it, So it's important that we support not only ourselves, but the children of today, the young people of today, to coming into that place of understanding that if we cultivate within our own self, our own personal vision of ourself, then those external influences will have less influence. We will know better how to handle them. When we're talking about the internal tendencies, in Yin this morning, I said something to the effect of, pay attention to how patient you're being with yourself. Because your patience that you're willing to expend on yourself is a direct reflection of the fear you carry that you have no patience. The belief you carry, well, I'm not a patient person, I can't sit in this posture. Or I'm trying to sit in this posture, but I don't have enough patience. So I'm going to fail. It's an internal belief about yourself. Well, I have really horrible balance. I'll never be able to do this posture. I'm not strong enough to hold myself up in headstand or swan pose on the floor. These things that we tell ourselves, these stories that we reinforce in our own minds that limit greatly even our willingness to try. Had a student one time, actually many students, but this one person in particular comes to mind, who came up after class and said, no matter how many times you tell us to do that posture in class, I can never do it. And I said, what do you mean by that? They said, well, I could never get that posture. And I said, but every time I ask you to do it, you do. And she's like, no, I don't. I can't do that posture. And I looked and I said, go into high lunge right now. So she goes into high lunge. And I said, okay, now take your front leg to come into the swan pose. And I said, now what's your problem? She goes, I can't do this posture. I said, you are doing the posture. It's just that your ego is telling you you're not good enough because you're afraid on some level of your own being that you're not good enough. And it's playing out right here on this battleground. But if you look through eyes of clarity, what you will see is that you are doing it. You are. 100%. So now you need to change that story and stop telling yourself, I can't do this. And acknowledge it may be uncomfortable, it may be difficult, there may be other obstacles in my way. But those are things that I can lend myself toward working through. Versus saying to myself, I can't do this. Another phrase people don't often like, and it's like every once in a while I'll say it just because I know people don't like it. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean because it gets them thinking once we start talking about it, is this phrase, the universe won't give you anything you can't handle. I love that. Almost every person started shaking their head. I hate that phrase. It's true though, right? It's such a trigger, isn't it? So what does that mean though? What does it mean? And why do we shake our head no? Are we actually saying to ourselves, I hate that phrase? Or are we saying to ourselves, I don't have that kind of faith in myself to be able to walk through difficult situations with grace? I don't have that kind of faith in myself. Or are we saying, I just don't want to. I just don't want to. That's not the fun I'm looking for, Because the reality of it is the universe will place on your path whatever is going to place there, and you will deal with it. You will, because you don't have a choice. And you may not deal with it eloquently, gracefully, joyfully, skillfully, but you will deal with it because you won't have a choice. Well, what if I just ignore it? Well, that is a way of dealing with things, isn't it? To just ignore it, to try to avoid it. And you'll try to avoid it until you can't avoid it anymore. So it is true. The universe won't put anything in front of you that you can't handle. You will handle it. And maybe that's the way it should be said. Maybe it should be, the universe won't put anything in front of you that you won't be forced to handle, because you're forced to handle everything that's put in front of you. On some level or another, you will face it. Even if your eyes are closed and your heart is closed, you'll still encounter it on some level. Now, why? Why do we have such an aversion to the difficulties of life that a phrase like that should bother us so much? Make us actually have a physical reaction. No. A cringe. Shoulders up to the ears. Head saying no. Like someone just bound us with chains or something. Where does that reaction come from? Because from the moment that we were born, what have we heard? Life is unfair. These hard times, I hate these hard times. I'm working this hard so you don't have to go through what I went through. We hear all of these different tonalities and words and phrases from the people around us because, of course, they love us. They care about us. They want to see us have a better life, comparatively speaking, perhaps, than what they had as a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle. But we also hear it from our friends, right? We hear it from other people who are mimicking what they have heard from their parents, aunts, uncles, and other family members. And so we pick that up. We pick up this idea that this life is supposed to be a certain way. I'm supposed to have a certain amount of a success. I'm supposed to look a certain way, act a certain way, have certain happinesses. And when they don't come, well, that's not okay. That's reflected as a failure. But is it a failure? Or is it just that whatever you wanted is nowhere near as useful for you as what it is that you've received? And I don't say that in a way that bypasses the absolute importance of trauma, because a lot of the time in this life, the things that come to us on our path are trauma-laden. But the reality is a very delicate reality in this way. I'm not going to say that the traumas that come to us are wholeheartedly, in that moment, purposeful. But what I will say is that humbly, based on my own experience, every single trauma that has come to me in my life that I have been forced to face has at some point or another when I was open to it because of my own inner strength and harnessing that inner strength, has at some point or another in my life given me the strength to face other things that I might have otherwise shut down to. The traumas that I have experienced in my own life have humbly, not always, but in moments where I was able to, they have allowed me to understand the pain and suffering of other people. They have inspired service. They have inspired study. They have inspired me not only to reach out to try to support the alleviation of suffering in the world, but those traumas have also caused me to reach in, to investigate my own understanding of suffering, and to right-size my own life so that my unnecessary suffering might be lessened. Therefore, my energy economized in such a way, it's not wasted anymore on pure reactionism. And so then when the necessary suffering comes along, I have the energy to deal with it, to face it, to confront it. Most times when we run away from the uncomfortable, we're doing so because we're tired. We're like, I don't have the energy for this. So our answer is to book it. Get out of here. Go someplace else where things appear nice. Because we're just like, I'm too tired. I don't have it to give. But the reason why we don't have it to give is because we're wasting our energy so much of the time on things that don't need our energy. And much of that is the unnecessary suffering that we encounter in this life. Unnecessary suffering that is based on our attachment to the outside world, our attachment to some preconceived notion about what our inside world is supposed to be like, failure, success, those types of things, and the truth of ourself, the true potential we carry, the peace, the kindness, the goodness. These aren't just catchphrases. You can't stand that. People go, oh, you're looking at life through rose-colored glasses. I'm like, bullshit. No, I'm not. I don't look at life like it's some kind of unicorn with sparkles coming out of its ass. That in and of itself is BS. I look at life as the hardest thing that you or I will ever do. And then I say to myself, but in spite of the difficulty of being embodied in this world at this time, and I say that because this is the only time we really know, right? Other times were hard too for people, but right now this is what's difficult for us. That in spite of all of that, there is still joy. There is still goodness. There is still grace. There is still unity. And there is this healing that goes along with that. And what that healing is not some lifting up of the ego into a place where it knows everything and is everything and has special powers and can attract money and fame and fortune and friends and attractive people. No, it has nothing to do with that. The lifting up of the self is peace. Period. It's peace. And if you ask anybody in this life what they really want, in some way, shape, or form, they're going to say either happiness or peace. And then when you investigate what happiness actually is a little bit more, you break it down to its root. It's peace. It's peace. I just want to be peace. I just want to be okay. I just want to be content. And then the ego comes back in and says, well, in order to be content, everything has to go your way. You have to have happy, happy, joy, joy, new car, new friends, fame, fortune, all these other things. And then you're left teetering, walking across a tightrope, teetering, falling to one side or to the other side. Am I going to fall to the side of a true, deep investigation within my own self of what peace actually is? Or am I going to fall onto the side of the ego and just keep grasping at all of the things I think are going to bring me happiness and still not find it? And still not find it. Sure, there's moments of satisfaction, there's moments, absolutely. But those moments are fleeting. They do not last. They do not last. We talked about that last week or the week before. These flowers are so beautiful. And look at them, they're still like red and pink, right? Very resilient little flowers. But at some point they're going to turn brown. And when they do, they won't be here anymore because someone will replace them. So even the joy that these flowers bring is momentary in comparison to the joy that inner peace brings to you. But in order for us to attain or to come to inner peace, we have to understand the fear that we carry within ourselves that stops us short. That says, I don't think so. I read this really interesting little meme. and it may not even be true. It may have just been somebody trying to make a point, but it was such a poignant point that the story within there was like absolutely believable. The meme said that, paraphrasing, a friend of his is a pastor, and the pastor came to him and said, I'm having some trouble with my parishioners recently. And he said, well, what do you mean by trouble? And he said, well, I'm up there reading from the Sermon on the Mount. And I'm reading about generosity and kindness and taking care of the poor. And after the service, this group of parishioners came up and said, why are you touting all of these liberal ideals on the pulpit? And he looked at him and said, what do you mean liberal ideals? It's right here in the Bible. And he said, no. Those concepts are outdated. They're weak. They're not what you should be talking about. And I thought to myself, that is such a disease of today's world. That in our heart of hearts, we have to label everything. And if a quality that actually has value belongs to the perceived enemy, then that makes that quality bad? No. Kindness, unity, goodness, joy, service, nonviolence, generosity, contentment, peace. These are not weak things. These are actually the hardest qualities in this entire world to embody. If they were easy, everybody'd be doing it. Violence is easy. Would you agree? Violence is easy. All you got to do is lose it, right? That's it. That's all you got to do. Just lose it. But nonviolence is difficult. It's hard. One of the hardest things in the world, because in order to embody nonviolence, what do you have to do? You have to harness your violence. You have to look at it. You have to accept, number one, that yes, you are a violent person. Number two, in what ways am I violent? Number three, in what ways am I willing to change my own violence? And number four, in what ways am I willing to grow into changing the rest of what I'm currently not willing to change? Number five, how brave am I willing to be in order to live a different life? A life that is based on less reaction and more responsiveness. So many things, we could keep going. So violence is nothing. Violence is weak. Violence is petty. Violence is nothing to have pride about. And pride is, anyway, not the best word to use, but I think you know what I mean. But nonviolence, peacefulness within our own self, that's something. That's something to celebrate. That's something to celebrate, not egotistically, but to say, I'm contributing to the solution, not to the problem. But in order to come to that place of cultivating great peace within the self, we have to understand the dialogue that we're fighting, that we're battling within ourselves. Questions or reflections so far? That's a lot, right? Questions or reflections so far? Is it pretty straightforward? Yeah. Did you want to say something, Lena?
Yeah, well, the two words that you said that I keep going back to and really trying to remember like what the connection one was. We talked about suffering, not necessary, unnecessary suffering, and peace, because those were like two things that one led to the other.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't like to sit here and you hear you connect, and I'm like, well, I remember those phases, and that's what stuck out to me. Having it and eventually coming to peace and coming to letting go of the things that were causing me suffering.
Yeah.
And even the nonviolence talk. As much as I really want to communicate in a nonviolent way. It's really hard. So much mindfulness is necessary to do that.
Yeah. Mindfulness is necessary. Strength is necessary. Courage is necessary. Because it was interesting. I was having this conversation with someone one time. And we'll just say that they weren't interested in nonviolence. Okay. So they're sitting there and they were talking to me or at me. And I was listening. And then I was speaking slowly because I was thinking about what I was saying and wanted to make sure that I was mindfully choosing my words. And the person turned around to me and said, well, isn't that a contorted statement with all the thought you just put into it? And I took a deep breath in because, reaction is, And I just said to the person, in another point in my life, I would have said a few things to that person, and they would not have been kind. But in that moment, I was able to harness. I felt it. There was anger. There was a reaction coming. But instead of that reaction, I turned around to the person and I said to her, you can choose to see my response as conflated or whatever it is that you want to see it as. Or you can choose to see it as thoughtful, because I'm not trying to say something to hurt you, to put a knife or a dagger in you. I'm working very hard in this moment to try to let you in, to have an understanding between us. But if you want to see that as, purposefully composed, go right ahead. That's your option. That's your free will. And mine, well, I choose mindfulness. And then I left because I knew the conversation wasn't going anyplace else, But even that, having to get the last word, which that was sort of, because I got up and left, right? That's even a little bit of violence, isn't it? It sure is. Yeah. Yeah. We're so tricky, aren't we? We're so complicated. We really are. Yes.
I just heard something with the rose-colored glasses that was pretty different. Just like a completely different perspective on it. Is that when people have the rose-colored glasses, it's used as a filter, that they see the good in the bad.
Sure.
Instead of saying, oh, you're just naive to everything that's happening. Yeah. Like the other way, the darker your glasses, the more you don't see the good.
That's right.
So I thought that was interesting.
That's actually a really great one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to borrow that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm a big Star Wars anime kind of fan.
Yeah.
And usually when the main character or big character is going on a journey to like self-discovery, they have to confront the negative or the darkness inside them. And I just was watching that episode of Star Wars where Yoda had to do this. And it's very interesting that I watched that a few days ago and I'm here today seeing that you do have to like harness that inside of you in a way that is still nonviolent and is still peaceful.
Yeah, totally. I love Star Wars. I do. I know that it's like, for a lot of people, it's Star Wars or Star Trek, but I love them both because I just think they're both potent like that.
Mm-hmm.
They really are. And yeah, it's internalizing your study, but not bashing yourself over what you find, because that's defeating of the whole purpose, right? It's going through and simply accepting. It's saying, yes, the tendency is there. Boy, she's still there. Whew. Okay, but you're not coming out right now. And then, kindness, choosing kindness in words, choosing kindness in action, not niceness. Right? We all understand there's a big difference between those two. Kindness is a mindful choice to not inflict harm upon another. Niceness is a manipulation to make somebody like me. I'm going to be nice so you don't not like me. I'm going to be nice so that maybe you'll be nice to me. Or I'm going to be nice because I don't want you to be mad at me. So niceness is actually a mental manipulation, whereas kindness is an act of generosity. And so when we are generous with ourselves in the way that we see our flaws as well as our strengths, that's healing to the self. That's healing. That builds resiliency. And it also empowers us to see the way things are versus get caught up in the illusion of what we would like to have, what the ego would like to have. So very important, yeah. I haven't watched the Star Wars anime. Now I'm going to have to go check it out. Yeah. Wow. Any other reflections or questions right now?
You talked about wasting energy. So how do we recognize that? Because I think often we don't realize what's going on. So any tips, hints to...
Yeah, you're right. We often, 99% of the time, have no awareness of the connection between things. And so because it's so hard at first to get that connection, to see the connection, to be aware of how we're wasting our energy, we really are kind of benefited by simply accepting that every facet of the way we live our life is directly connected to every facet of our fear and loathing. Every facet. The way we eat, when we eat. The way we sleep, when we sleep. The way we talk, when we talk. How we hang up the phone, how we answer the phone. Hello. Versus, hi. Everything that we do is connected. It's a great weaving. We can't just take the sweater apart. I wish it all to be fixed. It's done. No. You have to pull one thread. And if you want to take that weaving apart, you have to pull the thread a little bit at a time, mindfully, because otherwise what happens? Anybody ever try to unknit something? It becomes a knot. And it is the knot from hell. Because it's the kind of knot that has so many interweavings into it that you just don't even know how to undo it at that point. And then that will cause so much frustration. So you need to know that part of the process of unintermingling our energy with those things that are basically wastes of our energy is a process. It's a long process. So you're just pulling that thread a little bit at a time and watching what comes along with it. And one of the first things that you're going to notice that comes along with it is anger. I'm angry. What am I angry about? It's a nice day. I'm not having many problems right now. Where's this anger coming from? Fear. Where's this fear coming from? Reluctance, resistance, guilt, grief, disappointment, all of these things. These are all going to come out with the thread. So then as you're discovering and accepting that all of these emotions, these very complicated multitude of emotions, are existing in their own framework within your life experience, then you look and say, what does anger have to do with eating? What does anger have to do with sleeping? What does fear have to do with eating? What does fear have to do with sleeping?
Control.
It has to do with control, and it has to also do with drive.
Managing your energy.
Well, not initially. Initially, it's mismanagement. Once you start taking hold of it, then you're learning how to manage. Otherwise, what are you doing? You're eating an entire pizza at 12:30 in the nighttime. You're getting up at 3 a.m. and eating a quart of ice cream. You're going for the fast junk food and avoiding the vegetables. You're not being mindful about where your food is coming from, when you're eating it, how you're eating it, what your mindset is while you're eating, while you're making it. Native American cultures have, that's not the PC thing to say today, though, is it? What is it? Indigenous populations from this region of the world, right? They have a beautiful saying. So you never cook your food when you're angry, because your anger goes into your food, and then people are consuming that. So bless your food. Bless your food. Here we say, chant while you're making food. Chant while you're preparing food. This way, your mind isn't running off into other directions, So then once you're starting to see that these things are present, you do need to actively look at how they're related to all of the other threads that are trying to come along with it. I used to crochet a bit, and I used to knit. And when I would make a mistake, I would try to unknit, and I'd have like 7 different threads pulling through with it. Food, sleep, relationship, belief about the self, so self-esteem, and illness, physical illness. Those 5 tend to be intermingled with whatever emotion it is that you're looking at. Your emotions can make you sick. They can cause pain in your body. Pain in your body is going to stop you from wanting to enjoy life. No. Because you're going to look at your body like, you're failing me. You're failing me. I can't go do anything because of you. And that's not the truth. The truth is, look at what else in your life is not balanced. Adjust it. And the pain will adjust. My husband used to say he had this job. According to social standards, it was a very good job. It had a high rate of pay. It was somewhat prestigious. But he was so stressed out that he would come home every day and for like 2 hours. And I wouldn't say a word. I'd just listen. And then after he was done, pretty much always say the same thing. When are you going to leave that job? And he would say the same thing. I'm not. And I would say, why? You would like it to kill you? And he would say, no, because I'm afraid that if I leave this job at my age, there won't be another one out there. And I would say, don't let your fear get the better of you. There's always going to be something else out there. And our life budget is going to expand and shrink according to the resources that we have. And that's not going to impact how much we love each other. But simplifying by moving away from that thing, which literally is killing you, is going to make your life a better place. That's going to make our life a better place. That's going to make life a little bit of a better place. So we have to right-size ourselves. We have to align with the qualities that we want to see in our life. And it doesn't escape me, and it never escaped Ed either. That it wasn't long after we were dealing with this for about 2.5 to 3 years on a day-to-day basis It wasn't long after that. It was within a year and a half that he was diagnosed with cancer. So when people say there's no relationship between cancer and stress, that is not the truth. There is a direct relationship, and scientific research has proven it, that high levels of chronic stress are the foundational principle in the development of all illnesses in the body. And where does that stress come from? But the choices that we make. And where do those choices come from? The beliefs that we carry about ourselves and the world. So start to change those beliefs towards something simpler and more full of goodness, more full of kindness, more full of unity, and less full of the rest, And then what you'll see is that you may still have pain in your body, but you'll be much better to deal with it. You'll still have bumps on the road. Yep, universe still going to put that stuff there. Just because you're doing your work doesn't mean that life's going to be easy. That isn't the promise. The promise is life is going to be difficult. That's the promise. No matter how much work we do. But the difficulty is either met with difficulty or it's met with something else. Resilience. And when it's met with resilience, then we thrive. Our potential is to thrive. And that's what we do. Great question. I'm going to do a time check. Okay. Any other questions or reflections right now? Yeah. Did you have one, Lena? Or were you just scratching?
I was just scratching, but
that was your third eye going, okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I wanted to talk, I was hoping you talked today about stress.
Yeah. Stress is really important. People don't realize. They say, I'm pushing through, I'm muscling through, I'm doing it, making it happen. What are you making happen? Are you loving? Are you living? Are you laughing? Are you having moments of peace? Or are you just pushing? So, a cart full of coconuts. I don't know. I got Kerala on my brain today. So a cart full of coconuts. You're pushing it down the road. And that road becomes a bit of a hill. And you got to push it. And then you keep pushing it. And the hill becomes steeper. And you got to keep pushing it. That's like what we do in life. We just keep pushing. We don't take any breaks. We rarely stop. We rarely stop and look and say, well, is there an ox somewhere that can help me out with this? Is there another tool, a skill set that I can acquire that's going to help me with this burden that I have placed upon my own self because of the beliefs that I carry, because of the way I perceive myself? Is there something else that I can learn, some other skill I can acquire that will help me to detangle all of that into something that is far less stressful? Worst thing we ever did was become farmers. Now I'm not talking about current times. I'm talking about in the deep history. Prior to farming, what was there? There was hunting and gathering and simple cultivation, like little bits of cultivation here and there. And during that time, we had a need to work together. We had a need to share together because we all had to thrive, or we all didn't, And then all of a sudden, we also had a different kind of diet too, which lent itself to a greater amount of health. And I'm not going to get on that soapbox right now, but that's the anthropologist in me coming out. So, at some point in time, we went from hunting and gathering and small level cultivation to large scale cultivation and to mono and duo cropping. And when that started to happen, what did we start to see? But this field is mine, it is not yours. There's a reserve here that I now have to protect, and I don't care if you're starving. If you want me to give you something, then you have to give me something. Relationships start to break down. People start to hoard and become greedy. They start to care less about the community. And then we come forward to today, and I mean, like, I'm going back 10,000 years, right? So, like, you know, to say that the worst thing we ever did was become farmers is not a reflection of today's world with 8 billion people in it, but a reflection of the world of the past. Now, today we have industrial farming, and half of the stuff you eat isn't even food. It's not even food. And it's injected with all kinds of stuff. The food that there is, it's sprayed down with pesticides and all this other stuff. And can we make it work? To some degree, yes. But to a greater degree, make your yard into a garden. Grow so much of your own food that you cut your grocery bill in half. It's not that difficult. You know, it really isn't. They say if you have 1/10 of an acre, you can grow enough food for your whole year. Yeah, 1/10 of an acre. As long as you're canning and jarring, you can grow enough food to get you through the whole year. 1/10 of an acre. Simplify. And I know at first that's not simple because you got to go out and you got to till the yard. You got to turn it over, and then you got to plant the seeds, and then you got to do a little bit of weeding, and then you got to go out and do some harvesting. But that's good for your soul. Yeah, that's good for your soul. You want nature? There it is. It's right there. There's a whole bunch of gardens out there. If you ever need some time weeding, go right ahead. No one will stop you. But there's no feeling greater than that. Growing your own food. Yeah. I forgot what the question was. Did I answer it?
Well, I wanted you to talk about stress.
Yeah. And food is a source of stress. Food is a huge source of stress. There are more dietary issues in the world today than there ever have been. And that's not just because there's more people in the world than there ever have been. It's a greater percentage of people that have dietary distress, more children being born with Crohn's disease and things along those lines. And it's because the quality of the food in this world is just depleted, deteriorated because of the way it's being manufactured and marketed to us, you know. And so the first thing that you can do to start to alleviate stress is eat better. Eat more whole foods. Eat more green foods. And you don't have to believe me. You don't have to take my word for it. Don't take my word for it. I never want anybody to take my word for anything. But I do challenge you to try it out for yourself. Take 6 months of your life and commit yourself to a more whole food based diet and see what happens to your physical body and your mind, to your level of impatience, pain, to irritation, to your digestive cycles, to all of it, to your energy levels. Give it 6 months. Be your own experiment. You know, wasn't there that video, what was that from, where he was like, be your own grandpa? I'm my own grandpa. Who was that? It was it was like from National Lampoons or something like that, Vacation or something. So you be your own experiment. Don't take anybody else's experiment, you know, as the absolute truth. You figure, you try it. Absolutely.
Two quick things, and thank you, Swamini. When you were speaking of unraveling the sweater, it made me think of something I was taught with a gold chain, like where a necklace, when it gets stuck or there's a knot in it, you can't just pull it apart. That knot is not easy. You have to gently knead it. And so you have to be gentle with it or you're never going to get that knot out. So that was another great analogy to use or think about. And then the other thing that came to mind was when you were talking about pushing the cart up the hill. And so when you spoke of conserving energy or realizing when you're pushing it out, to me that embodies stress. Like we've taken on this thing, right? Oh, I got it. I'm going to push it up the hill. Mm-hmm. And then in some ways we just keep telling ourselves, oh, I'm going to do it, I got to do it, I got to do it. No matter how much it stresses us out, we think we can get to the top of the hill, which can be somewhat positive. But also I think there's this acknowledgement that if we don't, it's okay to be like, I don't want to go the rest of the way up the hill, right? Like it's. I think that's also where we sit with ourselves and say, okay, why am I stressed out? Why did I think I could climb that hill? Or all the other things, and just to stop the cart, put it to the side, and
why did I ever think I'd want to?
Right, so many things, right? Like, and is there the purpose to me getting there besides saying that I'm there, right? Oh, I did it, I did the thing. But-
and I did it by myself, and I didn't need any of you to do it with me. I didn't need anybody else. All me.
Right.
Total
right.
ego.
Right.
Yeah.
And to just be able to set that cart to the side and sit and be like, just as you said, is there an ox? Is there a friend? Is there somebody else's hand that could help me up this hill? And then what will that bring about in the end as well? You know, what will that cultivate in me? So I think just to even set the cart down and be okay with that and accept that it's not always a burden against yourself is why you decided to do something, but then to sit with that and accept that, well, that wasn't the best move, but now how can we better use our energy to get to the top?
And imagine that there's like a group of people right there, you know, and you're like, hey, can you all support me for a couple of minutes to get this up the hill? And you can all have a coconut, you know? And let me tell you, if you're in India, that's a really profound, valuable thing. Coconut water. And so they all come and they all help you, and then everybody enjoys a coconut. But what is it about today's world? They're my coconuts. Yes?
I was just going to piggyback on what you two were saying. That feeling of when you do ask for someone's help and they say yes and you've accomplished it together, it is a lot better than feeling like you accomplished it by yourself.
Yeah.
It just feels so much better.
It does. And then you have storytelling to share. Do you remember when we did this? Do you remember that struggle? And man, boy, did we really work together at that. Versus, I did this and I did that. And like, who you didn't tell that story to? Your ego is going to listen to it for a little while, but you know,
Is that the martyr's violence towards yourself?
The martyr, the loner, the pitta, right? Yeah, the pitta. Yeah. The overachiever, all these things. But you know, we can learn how to compassionately look at these tendencies within ourselves and find a little bit of humor in them, not just demean them, because they have served us in some certain moments in our life. They've taught us something. If nothing else, they've taught us that they're not as valuable as we think they are. But in other moments, they've also taught us a little bit about self-reliance. So there's a tightrope to walk there too. When do I need to be self-reliant versus not, versus more communally oriented? Really important things to consider. All right, we're going to stop there for now. We shall continue next week, as we always do. Let's sit tall and close the eyes. And draw the hands together in front of the heart. Lift our voices in one Om. Om Shri Matre Namaha. May we all be peaceful and free from suffering. Thank you so much for being here today. So good to see each of you. Thank you.